Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Massive thanks to the authors, Roxi2Star and ThatOneZed for allowing me to adapt their awesome story. Follow the link in the description to check out more of their works. Today we will be listening to the 12th part of What If Deku Had Both One for All and All for One. If you enjoy, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing down below, and don't forget to hit that bell icon so you get notified when videos go live. Now, without further ado, let's get into the video. Chapter 24, First Dates. Chapter by Roxi2Star. Saturday finally arrived after what seemed like ages, and Izuku was excited. He had a date. He was bouncing on his feet as he stood in front of the mirror, trying to get his hair to behave. He kept fluffing it, hoping the top would just curl the way he liked, and this was how Dad found him. "Think it's fluffy enough?" Dad asked with a teasing grin, propped up against the door frame. Izuku glared at him. "Sometimes it does this thing where it curls forward." He fluffed his hair. It flopped. "Dang it." Dad chuckled softly. "Here, how about you let your old man take a stab at it, He stepped closer into his space. "What are you gonna even do? Just watch." He opened the bathroom cabinet and pulled out a small jar of pomade. "You have a cute face. May as well show it." He put some in Izuku's hair. And with a little pushing, he styled it out of his face. "How's that?" Izuku inspected himself in the mirror. He looked nice. The hair out of his face, the way Dad had finger combed his curls into place. "I like it." He turned to Dad. "What do you think overall?" His outfit was pretty simple by most people's standards, but to Izuku, it may as well be a suit. He was wearing jeans, real, actual jeans. When he wasn't in uniform, Izuku wore almost exclusively athletic gear. Hoodies, t-shirts, sweatpants, and basketball shorts. So to wear jeans? It was an event. He also had a t-shirt on that was white and cut tightly, reading date shirt across the chest. Over that, he wore a red flannel with the sleeves rolled up. It was a little chilly for this late in spring. "Very smart," Dad said honestly. "I didn't even know you owned jeans. Is the shirt too on the nose?" "I also didn't know I owned jeans," Izuku chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. "I was going to wear that really nice yellow button-up you got me, but," he flushed, "it's too small around my chest now. Besides, I think it's funny." Dad nodded. "You did bulk up for the entrance exam. You look great though, kiddo. I'm glad you and Todoroki are going on a nice date." Dad then began to fake cry. "Leaving your father, all alone, on Katsuden Saturday." Izuku rolled his eyes. "It's my first date. I think it's a good enough reason to skip out, just this once." He gently pushed past his father to head into the living room. Yagi sat on the couch, but he stood once Izuku entered the room. "You look nice," Yagi said, approaching him. He noticed Dad fake crying and reached over Izuku to bop him on the nose, drawing a chuckle out of both him and Dad. He smiled at the compliment. "Thanks. Well, I should probably head out. Shoto and I are meeting at 1. If I don't leave now, I might miss the train." Dad stepped forward and grabbed his shoulders. "Listen, just be careful, okay? The hero killer incident wasn't that long ago. Plus the League of Villains and him. It's dangerous out there, so just check in when you get to places, okay?" he asked. "Okay," Izuku said, "I promise I will. But I think we'll be just fine." His father sighed. "I know. I just worry. You're my whole world. My baby. If anything happened to you, I wouldn't be able to live. So just be careful and make smart choices." He paused, pulling back. "And listen. I know you really like Todoroki, but don't rush things." Izuku tilted his head in confusion. "Rush things?" A bright pink covered Dad's nose. "You know, sexually." An even brighter blush covered Izuku's. "Dad. I'm being serious. I was a teenage boy once. They're usually thinking about one thing. So Todoroki might be thinking about different things while you're in a dark theater." "Dad." Izuku yelled, "You realize I am also a teenage boy, right? I'm not a girl whose boyfriend is pressuring her. Stop pushing female purity culture on me." Dad grabbed him by the shoulders, shaking him. "The fact you're both boys is why I'm bringing it up. There's 2 of you. Teenage boys are riddled with impure thoughts." Yagi offered, unhelpfully. Yes. Dad said, sounding like a crazy person. Impure thoughts. Stop that. Seek. Jesus. Izuku looked between them, giving them each an unimpressed look. Jesus. Really, Dad? Neither of us believe in religion. And Yagi-san, as he glanced at Yagi. Religiously ambiguous for marketing reasons. Exactly. Izuku yelled. You know what, we're done with this conversation. I am going on my date with Shoto. I will see you both tonight. I love you, Dad. Goodbye, Yagi-san. He grabbed his shoes and quickly slipped them on. I will let you know whenever we change locations. Dad sighed. Bye, kiddo. I love you too. Izuku grabbed the door handle and smiled at the two of them again. Bye, he cried before walking out of the door. The door shut behind Izuku. Hisashi turned to look up at Toshinori, and Toshinori looked back, so Toshinori began, when do we get in the car and follow them? Hisashi smirked. God, he loved his best friend. Let's give him a 10-minute head start. Izuku ran up the subway stairs. He tried to tell himself to keep calm, but his heart was pounding in his chest. A date. A real actual first date. With Shoto. He was so excited. He was so nervous. Izuku walked up to the meeting spot, a large fountain in the middle of the square. He sat on the edge of it and pulled out his phone to text Shoto and tell him he'd arrived. To his surprise, he already had 2 messages in his messenger app. One from Ida reading. Midoriya-kun, I hope you and Todoroki-kun enjoy your first date. Seeing the two of you together after everything that happened has brought me a lot of joy. Please be safe and be home before curfew. I will see the both of you on Monday and wish to have the details about your time out. Izuku smiled at the message. Good ol Ida. He sent a quick thank you before checking his other message. Eureka. He smiled and opened it. I heard you and Todoroki-kun have a date. I hope you have fun. I was really shocked when you two got together, but I really want you to have a good time. Send pics. He texted a quick reply before pulling up Shoto's contact. Before he could even start typing, a slender pale finger pushed his phone down. Izuku looked up only to be met with the face of his boyfriend. Hello, Izuku. Hi, Shoto. Izuku stood up and looked Shoto up and down. It just occurred to Izuku that he'd never actually seen Shoto in casual clothes before. And he looked good. He was wearing a white t-shirt with a small designer label on the breast, a pair of higher-waisted pants that the shirt was tucked into, a pair of pale blue Converse, and a light jacket over top of it all. Wow, Izuku blushed, you look really nice. Shoto looked him up and down. So do you, he said, his voice even. He hesitated before leaning down and pressing a kiss to Izuku's cheek. Izuku felt his entire body burn, especially at the spot where Shoto had kissed him. They'd made out before. Why did such a simple cheek kiss get him so hot and bothered? What are we doing first? Right. They had a whole date to go on. I thought we'd go see a movie first. There's a scary film that just came out that Shinsu-kun recommended. His boyfriend frowned. Shinsu said it was good, he asked. Yeah. Izuku said, taking Shoto's hand and beginning to drag him to the movie theater. It's a story about a boy who moves into a creepy manor and meets a ghost, he said. It's more of a thriller, so Shinsu-kun said it won't have that many jump scares. If that's what you want, Shoto said. They held hands as they made their way to the theater. Izuku went to buy their tickets, but Shoto stepped right up, holding a shiny credit card with the name Todoroki NG written on it. What kind of snacks do you want? That's what people do at theaters, right? Buy snacks? Izuku nodded. Sometimes. Dad and I used to sneak candy in, but it's really expensive to buy at the theater. I'd hate for you to spend all this money on me. Shoto held up the card again. I'm not spending a dime on you. It's on the human garbage. He snorted out a little giggle. Okay. But only if you're sure. Oh, I am. You know, Toshinori whispered softly. I'm having second thoughts. Hisashi turned and glared at him. You're just saying that because you hate scary movies, he whispered back. Besides, we're not even here to watch the movie, we're here to keep an eye on them. He motioned to several seats ahead of them, where Izuku and Todoroki sat watching the movie. The fake mustache is starting to itch. Maybe you should have gone with a more comfortable disguise then, Hisashi teased. He himself was in a simple outfit, along with a beanie to hide his hair. After all, the best disguises were barely disguises at all. They just needed to blend into the background. SHHH. The group to the left of them hushed them. They both quieted down as the movie began. It was a pretty decent film, all things considered. Hisashi wouldn't consider himself a film buff by any means, but 200 years was a lot of time to watch movies. This was clearly a passion project. He had to remind himself he wasn't here for cinema though, but to make sure his baby boy was okay. Both from villains and boys. It wasn't that he didn't trust Todoroki. In fact, he really liked Todoroki. He saw a lot of himself, maybe that was the problem, in the kid. He was a good kid, but he had a lot on his plate and Hisashi had always been one to assume things would go horribly wrong. As they often did in his life. He just wanted to make sure Izuku was having a good time. That he was taken care of. That if anything bad were to happen Hisashi could step from the shadows and take the proverbial bullet for him. He watched the back of their heads. They had leaned into each other. He could tell by the way Izuku kept turning his head that they were talking about the movie. Hisashi watched for a few minutes before he watched Todoroki do something he'd never thought the kid was capable of. Todoroki stretched his arms up above his head before laying one on the chair behind Izuku. His son didn't hesitate. He scooted closer, leaning his head into the crook of Todoroki's shoulder. It was equal parts cute and infuriating. The Papa Bear in him was desperately fighting the urge to run down there and rip Izuku from Todoroki's arms. But, this was normal. Todoroki and Izuku were 15. They're on their first date. They should be allowed to cuddle in the movie theater. He reminded himself it was sweet when Izuku pressed a kiss to the side of Todoroki's face. That it was sweet when Todoroki squeezed his shoulders gently. What was not sweet was when Todoroki turned his head to face Izuku and his son leaned up. They began to kiss. And then they didn't stop kissing. Hisashi averted his gaze, turning to face Toshinori and that stupid fake mustache. Toshinori was looking right at him, beet red in the low light. Well, Toshinori whispered, they are teenagers. I can't fucking believe this, my own son. Hisashi tried not to watch. Izuku was well within his rights to kiss his boyfriend and be a teenager. But, damn. Did they not need to breathe? Eventually, they stopped. Hisashi briefly reconsidered his opinion on religion before promptly tossing that idea out. Instead, he watched as they resumed cuddling as if they hadn't just been trying to suck each other's faces clean off. He rubbed his face with a long sigh. Teenagers. Izuku and Shoto walked out of the theater hand in hand. That part in the pond in the end was pretty good. Izuku said as he tugged Shoto along. I thought the actor did a really good job. His boyfriend nodded. Yeah, I ended up actually enjoying it. What now? Are you hungry? Izuku asked, looking up at him. I think there are a few cafes around if you want to get a late lunch. Or is it early dinner now? I wouldn't say I'm starving but maybe something small. Izuku nodded. Oh. Then a cafe is perfect. We can get crepes. Man, I haven't had a crepe in forever. He pulled Shoto along as he fished his phone out of his pocket. I think there's one nearby. Let me look it up. He said and googled it on his phone, also shooting a text to his dad that he had left the movies. The walk to the cafe wasn't far. Izuku ordered a strawberries and cream crepe, and Shoto got himself a matcha-flavored one. As they sat at one of the cute round tables outside under an umbrella, Izuku realized what they had done. Xiao-chan, wait, he cried, pulling his phone out once more. Let me take a picture. He held his crepe up next to Shoto's. Look. It's us. Shoto blinked. Oh. I suppose it is, he said looking down at his green crepe. That's cute. A blush dusted across Izuku's face. Man, I kind of feel bad now. It's like I'm eating you. I don't wanna eat Xiao-chan well. At least not in that way. He wouldn't mind eating him in a different context. Maybe Dad was right. Teenage boys were riddled with impure thoughts. He shook it from his mind. Ah well. He took a bite of the crepe. Crepe Xiao-chan tastes good. God, you're cute, Shoto said before taking a bite of his own. My bunny crepe is good too. Izuku giggled, leaning forward. That's so funny because I think he reached over the table and booked Shoto's nose. You're cute. They both sat there giggling eating their crepes. Across the street, Hisashi and Toshinori sat inside a coffee shop at a window table. They each had coffee. They are very sweet together, Toshinori said, leaning his chin on one hand and watching the boys as they enjoyed their date. Yet I could tell from the moment I met Todoroki that they were gonna end up like this, Hisashi said with a fond smile. He took a long sip of his coffee, letting the warmth run down his throat. When I got on the scene at the USJ, Todoroki was holding Izuku. He didn't want to hand him over to me. Ah, Toshinori said. That is cute. It's very clear Izuku has had a profound effect on the lad. He's opened up so much more since the sports festival. Hisashi nodded. Yet, he seems to just do that. Pull people into his orbit. When he was in middle school he wasn't nearly this popular, but with these hero kids. He took another sip of coffee. It's like he's catnip for them. I noticed that as well. I just wish it were only heroes who were pulled towards him. I haven't met anyone his age who attracts so many villain attacks so quickly. First this league of villains, then the hero killer. He sighed. I suppose it is part of being a hero, but something about that set off a red flag in Hisashi's head. But he put it aside for now. Well, right now he's safe. He's happy. He looked out the window. Shoto had scooted closer to Izuku. They had their heads together as they looked at Izuku's phone. The way his son smiled at Shoto made Hisashi feel full. It was bittersweet. His baby was becoming a man. But at the same time, how could he be sad when Izuku was smiling like that? You're right, Toshinori said and smiled at him. Hisashi could feel himself flush. He is. So he began, that movie, right? I know. Hisashi smiled back, I really liked the ending. Toshinori nodded. I agree, it was profound. Not to mention the actor in the lead role. Very well done. He took another sip before adding. The directing choices were good. I don't know that much about filmmaking, but even I noticed it was good. A lot of, I think the term is Dutch angles. You know, where everything is crooked. It's meant to make you feel uneasy. Oh, I did notice those. Who directed the movie again? He pulled out his phone and quickly googled it. I've met him, he made a movie about my years in America a few years ago. Hisashi sighed. That one, he rubbed his temples. Izuku was 9 or 10 when it came out. He watched it, so much. Did you enjoy it? The first 10 times maybe. You poor thing. The merch store was a bust. Closed for refurbishment. Izuku whined as they stood in front of the locked glass door. He pressed his nose against it, trying to see into the dark store. Man, I can see the All Might section from here. Shoto patted his back gently. Next time, I'll take you and buy the whole section. He looked up at his boyfriend. Ah, you're sweet, Shoto. He hugged his arm to his chest, nuzzling into it. Well, what should we do instead? There's a mini golf place nearby, karaoke I think, and the art museum. I wouldn't mind trying an art museum, Shoto said. I happen to really enjoy fine art. Really? Izuku asked, I didn't know that. He nodded and pulled out his phone for directions. Yet, Fuyamai has a collection of art books. And regular books. She lets me borrow anything from her collections. As a child, I used to flip through the art books and look at the paintings. That was such a cute mental image. Baby Shoto lying on his futon looking through an art book. Okay. Let's go to the art museum. The walk wasn't far, and Shoto once again insisted on paying for them. Once inside, Izuku grabbed a pamphlet with a map. He and Shoto stood off to the side, reading it. I wouldn't mind if we went to the ukiyo-e section, Shoto said as he pointed to the map. That was always my favorite section. Izuku nodded. I think I'd like to look at some modern art. I know people think it's silly, but, I dunno, I kinda like it. I'm fine with that. I always like abstract art as well. They set off for the ukiyo-e section first. It was full of traditional style paintings. Shoto walked slowly, reading all the information about the painting. Most he would look over carefully before moving to the next one. Sometimes, a painting would capture his attention and he'd move in closer to really inspect it. As they walked hand in hand through the art, Izuku looked up at him. You know, you being a bit of an art snob makes sense. I wouldn't call myself a snob, Shoto said back, I just think it's interesting. He knocked his shoulder into Shoto's. Think if you weren't going to be a hero you would have gone for art. No, I wouldn't have. Maybe poetry had I gone into an art. Izuku furrowed his brow at his weird wording. Hey, wait a minute, that was a haiku. His boyfriend flashed him a small smile. Green hair and doe eyes. More freckles than I can count. Too adorable. A furious blush washed over his face. Izuku looked down at his hands, mumbling to himself and counting syllables on his fingers. Okay. Secret soft smile, smells like campfire smoke and tea, makes my heart pound loud. Your middle line had one too many syllables, Shoto teased, but squeezed his hand, but you make my heart pound too. He brought Izuku's hand up to his lips and kissed the back of it. You smell like apples, mixed with vanilla and rain, I want to kiss you. God, you're too cool. Izuku whined, before standing up on his tiptoes to press a kiss to his lips. You're really showing me up here, Xiao-chan. They went to the abstract art next. In this room, Shoto got all kinds of distracted. Every painting seemed to call to him. It was adorable. He would stand in front of one, and read about it before tilting his head in thought. Izuku stood next to him. He tilted his head at the same angle to try and see it the way Shoto did. Is it me, or does this one kind of look like a banana? Izuku asked as they looked at a large yellow blob on a painting. I suppose it does, Shoto replied. I hate bananas, Izuku confessed, the texture always grossed me out. Shoto nodded. There's a lot of foods I can't eat based strictly on the texture. It's part of why I eat cold soba so much. Shoto trailed off looking for the word. Safe. That made a lot of sense actually. He took Shoto's hand. I understand. That's gotta be hard. It's not so bad. They made their way through the modern art section. As they walked hand in hand down a long hallway, Izuku hummed lightly, swinging their hands between them as they walked. From the corner of his eye, he could see Shoto looking down at him intensely. Izuku glanced up at him and batted his eyelashes. Something on my face, he asked. Shoto didn't reply. He glanced around, before tugging Izuku into a small alcove. It wasn't the most private place, but someone would have to get pretty close to see them. Shoto pinned him to the wall. Stop looking so cute, he ordered before leaning down and kissing Izuku. He responded at once, wrapping his arms around his neck and let Shoto kiss him stupid. Hisashi frowned, looking around from the bench he and Toshinori were sitting on. I think we lost them, he said. They were in front of the banana painting and now. Toshinori patted his back. They can't be far. Why don't we check the next section? He stood from the bench. I suppose. The two of them walked off together. They wandered the halls into another gallery room. As they walked, a painting caught Hisashi's eye. It was a portrait of a woman. She was, he supposed, in a way, pretty. Pale skin, with long inky black hair. She was lounging on a dark-colored sofa, and she wore a red velvet evening dress with matching red gloves. Jewelry adorned her neck and arms, even over her gloves. Her eyes, sharp and red, seemed to bore into him even though it was a painting. She was distressingly familiar. Hisashi? Toshinori asked. He kept his eyes on the painting. Where did he know this woman from? He looked at the information about the painting. Woman in red, artist unknown. Donation. Hisashi? Toshinori asked again, putting a hand on Hisashi's shoulder. Are you all right? He looked up at him. Oh hi. Yeah. Sorry. Just got distracted. We should find the boys. Toshinori frowned in thought. Hisashi, why don't we call it quits? They're almost done. If we don't leave now, Izuku will know we were out and might suspect us. Yeah, Hisashi said softly, you're right. He's got it from here. Let's go home. His friend smiled and led Hisashi away. But he spared one more glance over his shoulder at the painting of the woman. He shivered. They took different trains to get there, so they had to say their goodbyes at the train station. Izuku held his boyfriend's hands as they stood off to the side looking at each other. I had a really great time, Izuku told him. I did as well, Shoto said, squeezing his hands. Dates are fun. Or at least, they are with you. Izuku flushed. You're so cute. I think you're much cuter, but you're allowed to be wrong. He giggled. Sap. Shoto checked the time on his phone. I should go. Human garbage is expecting me home for dinner. Okay, Izuku said, I wish you could just come home with me. Sleep in my room. In my bed. It was Shoto's turn to blush. He hesitated a moment before cupping Izuku's face with one hand. I'll see if I can sleep over next week. Will your dad still let me sleep in there even if we're dating? Izuku frowned. I dunno. Probably. He might say something embarrassing and try to give us a sex talk, but I don't see him outright denying us. He bit his lip. Even if he did, I'd just move after he went to bed. I wanna sleep with you, he flushed like. Sleep not. I mean. I wouldn't mind doing that either, but I haven't. We're so new and young and... Shoto shut him up with a soft kiss. I know, he said, pulling back. You don't have to explain it to me. I'd love to sleep with you. You can cling to me instead of that body pillow. God, how was Shoto just this cool? He leaned his head into Shoto's shoulder. Honestly, that sounds pretty great. You can be my personal heating and AC unit. I'll keep the bed the perfect temperature. He glanced up. Your train is here. You should go. Izuku frowned and wrapped his arms around Shoto's chest. I know. He pulled back. I'll see you on Monday. Shoto nodded and kissed him again. See you Monday. I'll call you tonight before bed. Please, he said, and they kissed one last time before Izuku stepped back. Bye Shao-chan. Bye Bunny, Shoto waved. Izuku ran to make his train, feeling as light as he does when using one for all. He ran up the metal steps into the house, opening the door into the apartment. I'm home. Izuku called. He kicked his sneakers off at the door, stepping into the living room. Dad and Yagi were sitting together on the couch, watching the news. How was your date? Dad asked. Izuku smiled softly. Really nice, he said. We went to a movie, got crepes, and went to an art museum. I had no idea Shoto knew so much about art. Dad raised a brow. What about the merch store? Closed, Izuku said with a dramatic sigh. That's a shame. Next time then, he smiled. Hungry? Izuku nodded and sat on the couch between them. Can we get Akira's? He mustered up his best puppy dog eyes. Please? It's Saturday. Dad sighed and pulled out his cell phone. Yeah. Spent the whole day with your boyfriend and now you want Katsuden. Oh please, Izuku poked his side. You know, I half expected you to follow us around all day. Yagi coughed next to Izuku. So thanks for trusting me. His father ruffled his hair. Yeah. Of course. Izuku stood up. I'm gonna go change into house clothes, tell me when the food gets here. As soon as Izuku left the room, Hisashi leaned back into his seat on the couch. I'm a terrible person. Toshinori patted his thigh. You're not. You're just, overprotective is all. That's an okay thing to be. Still, Hisashi felt guilty. You know, he started, next time he says he's going out, whether it's with friends or with Todoroki, I'm just going to trust him. No villains jumped them in the museum and he proved he knows how to make smart choices. He got home on time. He's his own man. He's nearly 16. Hisashi leaned forward. My son is about to be 16. I'm so old. Hisashi, Toshinori said, you're over 200. I'm old. Chapter 25, Deku Salad. Chapter by Roxi2Star. The last week of June had descended upon them like a vulture about to pick the flesh from their corpses. Maybe, just maybe, Hitachi was just being dramatic, but damn it, he was stressing out. Written finals were in a week and then practical finals would be the week after. If he didn't pass, he'd be barred from going to the training camp the school had set up for them that summer, and he'd be damned if he didn't go. Being a hero student, especially one that got into the class as late as he did, was difficult. The work was more advanced, and the foundational hero studies were killer as well. And though his classes were very fun, All Might was pretty demanding as a teacher. He'd already improved dramatically since he enrolled in the hero track, but he did owe a lot of that success to Aizawa. That man was way better than any father figure he'd ever encountered in his life. He loved his mom dearly, but she had some shit taste in men. A stupid, rather masochistic part of his brain wondered if Aizawa was single. Most pros were, and often for good reasons. And the few pro heroes that weren't were usually in a relationship with other pro heroes. Aizawa didn't wear a ring, but that didn't mean anything. Ah well. Either way, he was pretty sure if Aizawa became his stepdad he'd be forced to blow his own brains out. He looked back down at his notes. He tried to remember the laws about property damage and the protocols around it without looking back into the book, but he was drawing a blank. Part of his study routine. Read it, write it, repeat it. If you can write something from memory, you've made it become muscle memory. Very useful for retaining information. Yet, here he was struggling to remember it. Aizawa had given them the last hour of the day for independent study. A precious gift he would not waste. Not like some of his classmates. He watched out of the corner of his eye as Kaminari doodled in the margins of his notebook. That little blonde sure was cute, but it was frustrating to see him wasting such a good opportunity. Midoriya, on the other hand, was not wasting shit. The little green menace was mumbling under his breath, using his quirk to type on his laptop faster. Man, what he wouldn't give to get a look at his notes. They either had to be meticulous or a mess. Either way, they were probably the most comprehensive study material out there. Actually. Yo Midoriya, he said, leaning forward in his chair, what are you doing after school? Midoriya leaned back, the green lightning around his skin disappearing. Just going home to do some studying. Maybe a jog. He said, why? I'll be honest, Hitachi said with a sigh, I'm struggling a bit on some of our hero law stuff. I missed the first 2 months, so a lot of that is pretty fuzzy to me. Would you want to study together? This was clearly the right thing to say. Midoriya's already massive eyes got bigger. Oh, Shinso-kun. I'd love to help you study. He said back. Wanna come to my place? It's only a few stops on the East Line. Hitachi hummed in agreement. Yeah, that'd be great. The tiny apartment he shared with his mom was usually pretty messy. She worked 2 jobs, and with him in school full-time, the housework tended to pile up on them. Not to mention the depression, but who's talking about the depression? As Midoriya went back to his typing, Hitachi tried to go back to studying. But he stopped, a small chill running down his spine. He looked behind him, only to see Todoroki watching, no glaring at him. Oh right, they'd been dating since May. And for whatever reason, Todoroki had decided he hated Hitsuhi. He wasn't sure if it was because of his quirk, usually why people hated him, or because he and Midoriya had pretty much clicked from the start. Was he jealous? Maybe. Golden boy Todoroki, with his perfect quirk and his perfect face and his perfect famous hero father, was jealous of Shinso Hitachi, because he and his perfect boyfriend got along. Man, some people really did have all the gifts, and boy howdy did they fucking hoard them. Well, fuck that. Midoriya was a ray of sunshine with blessed hero notes that Hitachi needed in order to pass his class. Todoroki can suck a lemon if he thinks he's going to stop hanging out with him just because he sends a few icy glares. Hitachi looked forward at the slope of Midoriya's back. The guy was pretty hot, actually, now that he stopped to think about it. If he thought he had a chance in hell to snag cute little Midoriya out from under asshole Todoroki, he would. His eyes flicked to Kaminari's blonde head. Midoriya was strong, driven, smart, absurdly cute, and not to mention very nice. He was as if a person was a warm hug, and then that warm hug was also secretly a knife, but as long as you weren't a villain you were safe from the secret knife. Todoroki didn't own Midoriya. And he certainly couldn't tell Hitachi what the fuck he could or couldn't do. So, fuck it. Stay mad, pretty boy. Shouto hated Shinso Hitachi with a passion. He had quickly shot up his list of most detestable people. He was part of such esteemed companies as Shigaraki and his minion Kurogiri, who had tried to kill him. Stain, who had also tried to kill him, Bakugo, who was annoying and stubborn in his refusal to hear Izuku's apologies for the last month and a half, and was making his boyfriend cry more than normal. And of course dear old dad. However, hating Shinso Hitachi felt like an easy type of hatred. A single all-consuming fire. Shinso kept looking at Izuku. His Izuku, like some sort of hunk of meat. Like a lost puppy, except with deadpan humor and a hint of depression. Izuku only had room for one snarky detached asshole, and that role was already filled by himself. Thank you very much, Shinso. His services were not needed. Shouto supposed it wasn't the obvious adoration that Shinso looked at Izuku with that bothered him. Izuku was adorable, and an Adonis underneath his clothes. Of course, people were going to stare at him, gawk at him, and generally admire his very attractive form. No, that wasn't what bothered Shouto. What did bother him was the easygoing way in which Izuku had offered his friendship to Shinsu, not giving him a choice and scooping him up like it was nothing. That was something Izuku had done for him, damn it. If it turned out Shinsu also had a complex about his quirk that Izuku would help him overcome through some combination of fighting and bone breaking, Shoto might just go jump off a bridge. Shinsu had a way of making the little moments he and Izuku went through together feel less special. Sure, maybe this was an internal problem with Shoto's insecurities, but damn it, he was 15 years old and he was allowed to project those insecurities onto the tall. They were the same height actually, but with Shinsu's stupid fluff of hair he looked taller. Stupid transfer student that was between him and God. To make matters worse, Shinsu had practically invited himself to Izuku's house. Alone. Shoto grit his teeth, snapping the wooden pencil in his hand. He wasn't about to stand for this. He was a Todoroki. Todorokis are winners. They don't take shit. He ignored how that little voice sounded like his father. Once the final bell rang, Shoto shot out of his seat, bag already packed to go. He stopped next to Izuku's desk. Izuku looked up at him, flashing him an adoring smile. Some of the cold fury melted in the face of pure sweetness and sunshine before him. "Hi Shao-chan," he said. Even his voice was sweet. It made Shoto want to melt a little. "What's up?" Shinsu was still packing up his notes, though he did watch their interaction out of the corner of his eye. "Good. Keep watching. I was wondering if you could help me with English again," he said. "I'm having a hard time with the worksheets President Mike gave us to study. You know I suck at it." "Ah, Shoto, you don't suck. English is hard. I used to mess it up all the time. It just has so many dumb rules." "Well, Shinsu-kun is coming over to study. Do you want to come too?" Shinsu looked up, glaring at Shoto. "Good. I'd love that actually." Shoto offered his boyfriend one of his own tiny smiles. He couldn't seem to make his face smile as big or as bright as Izuku could, but every time he managed to make his lips turn up it made Izuku's day. "Perfect. I'm glad you're coming. I actually was having some problems with math. Algebra just doesn't agree with my brain, it seems." Izuku stood, throwing his bag around his shoulders. "Ready to go, Shinsu-kun?" "As I'll ever be," Shinsu deadpanned. He stood with his own beat-up black bag hanging off of one shoulder. Izuku led them out of the classroom. "Mind if I stop by my dad's office real quick? I forgot my phone, so I just wanna let him know we're having company." Both of them gave an affirmative. The three of them walked together with Izuku filling the quiet with soft idle chatter. Shoto had to be honest, he wasn't exactly listening to the words but just enjoying the sound of his boyfriend's sweet voice. Izuku excused himself into the office, leaving Shoto and Shinsu alone. They both turned on each other. "So, what the fuck do you think you're doing exactly?" Shoto asked him. "I'm trying to catch up on hero law before finals next week. I know Midoriya has an A in that class and he seems like a good teacher. Ergo, study session. What the fuck are you doing other than being a pathetic and clingy boyfriend, who's so insecure he can't stand the idea of his boyfriend being alone with another guy?" Shinsu asked. Fire threatened to pool from Shoto's left side. He pushed it down. "I just need help in English. Are you sure it's just hero law you need, or are you so desperate for positive human interaction you've just latched onto the first person who happened to smile at you like a leech?" "Leech?" Shinsu asked. "You're the leech. You follow him around because without him you'd be a friendless reject. Says the lackluster transfer student with no friends to speak of other than the ones my boyfriend has graciously given you." Shinsu glared. "How the fuck did such a sweet guy end up with an asshole like you?" Shoto glared right back. "I got very lucky. Maybe if you made it into the hero track in the first place you could have beaten me to him." Before Shinsu could fire back, Izuku stepped out of the office, laughing at something his father had just said. He held the door open. Yeah, we'll be just fine, Dad. I promise," he smiled. "I'll be home late. I have 2 one-on-ones today," Midoriya-san said, now standing in the doorway. "So feed yourselves. You can even get Akira's delivered. But if you do that you better put a bowl of katsudon in the fridge for me." His eyes caught Shoto and Shinsu. "Have fun you guys. Shinsu, I have you on the book for a one-on-one tomorrow before school. Does that still work?" Shinsu nodded. "Yeah. Are we gonna work on making my targets do more complicated tasks or something else?" "Tasks?" I asked Midnight to join us as your target this time. I'm looking forward to it. Izuku grabbed Shoto's hand. We should hurry. If we're any later, the train is only going to get more full. Izuku was thrilled. A study session with his boyfriend and the guy who was quickly becoming one of his best friends. While yes, he and Kiken were still fighting, something he was very upset about, Shinsu had been a great comfort. They just got along so well. Shinsu was so funny. He had this sort of detached humor that Izuku loved. Maybe Izuku had a type in the people he attracted. Shoto was detached in humor, but his was much more dry. Cute in how often it was just pure and innocent. Shinsu tended to get more dirty and have a bit more wordplay, whereas Shoto would just be blunt. They were two of his favorite people and now he got to spend the afternoon with both of them. He just wished they could get along. He wasn't stupid. He was a highly observant person, so of course he knew they were at each other's throats as soon as he had his back turned. He couldn't for the life of himself figure out why though. They had so much in common. If they could just put aside whatever it was that made them fight like cats and dogs, well, he supposed it was two cats in this case. Shinsu was just as much of a cat type of person as Shoto was. Maybe a sweet study date was what they needed. Home sweet home. Izuku cried, kicking his red shoes off at the door. We have the apartment to ourselves, so it'll probably be easier if we work in the kitchen at the table. Unless you want more of a cozy space? In which case we can work in the living room and I can put some music on the TV. Living room works, Shinsu said, pulling off his last shoe. Shoto smirked, don't want him to see your shrine of a bedroom. Izuku grumbled. Shoto. That I mean yes, but don't go announcing it. What? Shinsu asked, deadpan. My room is very bright. Well. Izuku fumbled over his words. Let's just say it's very embarrassing. Xiao-chan picks on me every time he sleeps over. Doesn't sound like a very nice thing to do, Xiao-chan, Shinsu teased before sitting down in the living room. Izuku and Shoto followed. Izuku frowned. Don't make fun of my nickname for my boyfriend, he said softly. Xiao-chan was something special. Shoto had asked for something. Maybe for the first time in a long time he opened up. Izuku would be damned if anyone made fun of his boyfriend's request for an intimate nickname. No matter how funny they were. Shinsu winced at the slight cold edge in his voice. Sorry, he mumbled quickly. No worries, Izuku said, slipping right back into his cheery self. So. He sat down in front of one of the couches, grabbing the remote and quickly pulling up a music app on the TV. He selected his normal study playlist. Some soft Lofi vibes. The soothing music seemed to make his brain work better. What should we work on first? I'm thinking let's get the hero law stuff out of the way since we hang out alone a lot more, Shoto, he said. Plus, your hero law is actually better than mine, so I think between the two of us we can help Shinsu-kun. Whatever you want, Shoto said, sliding closer to him. They had a very productive study session, all things considered. They got takeout, which arrived just as they finished up going over the English worksheets. He set his father's food on the counter to cool while he set the table for himself and his friends. Cold soba for Shoto, ramen for Shinsu, and katsudon for Izuku. Just as he finished, the other two made their way into the kitchen. They sat together with Shoto next to him, and Shinsu across. Izuku could eat with chopsticks again, breaking his in half, and he dug in. Akira's. It never stopped amazing him how good it was. Shoto gave a pleasant noise next to him. Izuku watched as Shinsu took a bite into his own food. What the fuck? He asked seriously. Why is this shit so good? Is there cocaine in here? Is this because of a quirk? That's my theory. Izuku said. Akira-san will never tell us, but I think he has some sort of cooking-related quirk. All of his food has that wonderful umami flavor. I haven't tried his ramen before. May I? Izuku asked, clicking his chopsticks together. Yeah, sure, he said, pushing his bowl towards him. Izuku wrapped some noodles around his sticks. He didn't want to be greedy. He took the bite. Yeah, that's good. Not as good as katsudon, but damn. He turned to Shoto with a smile. Xiao-chan, can I have some of your soba? Shoto inhaled, filling his chopsticks with a bite. Only because you're so cute, he said, feeding Izuku a bite. Tasty. Wow. Shinsu said, looking down at his food. Right in front of my fucking salad. Shoto blinked. That's ramen, Shinsu. Buhu, Izuku said. Old meme. A very old meme. But very descriptive to my current situation of you two being nauseating, he said. Can't believe I'm third wheeling. All I want is to not fail. Izuku nudged his leg under the table. You won't fail, he said earnestly. You're a lot smarter than you give yourself credit for, Shinsu-kun. He sighed, taking another bite. If I don't fail the written portion, I'll for sure flunk my practical. I can barely use the capture device, plus I'm pretty sure everyone in our class could take me in a fight. Either one of you could probably kick my ass with both your arms tied behind your backs. Wouldn't that be nice? Shoto mumbled into his soba. Izuku shot him a glare. No, Shinsu-kun. You can't beat yourself up like that. Yet, especially when I can do it for you. Shoto. Shinsu sighed. I don't suppose you could help a guy out. Izuku beamed. There's a park just across the street. We can finish eating and head over. Ooh, that sounds like fun. Ever since Kikin and I have been, well, you know. I haven't been able to spare nearly as much as I'd like to. Could we? Sure, why not? Shinsu asked. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Apparently the worst that could happen was Hitachi getting his face smashed into the grass as the tiny hot kid practically strangled him with his muscular thighs. Ah well. Glory, what a hell of a way to die. He closed his eyes, ready to face the sweet embrace of death via thigh when the vice grip loosened. Hey. You lasted longer that time. Midoriya said, hopping up onto his feet. He pulled Hitachi into a sitting up position. Not too bad. Thanks, Hitachi wheezed. Midoriya stood before him wearing a pair of basketball shorts and white t-shirt that read polo shirt on the front. He and Todoroki simply had on their undershirts as well as a pair of borrowed sweatpants each. They fit surprisingly well. How about, you two go at it and I'll watch? I think I need 5 minutes. Sure. Midoriya said. Don't overwork yourself. And drink some of those waters please. I brought them for a reason. Once Hitachi leaned against a nearby tree with a water bottle in hand, Midoriya turned towards Todoroki. Ready to go. He hummed, standing from his own spot. It'll be nice to have a challenge. Yeah, fuck you too, Hitachi replied. Midoriya bristled at their hostility. Really, just be nice to each other, goddamn, he sighed, shaking his head. A problem for another time. Okay Xiao-chan, I care very much about you but that will not stop me from making you my bitch. Todoroki flushed. That's supposed to intimidate me? Izuku, you should know I don't take kindly to empty threats. It's not a threat. It's a promise. Again, Hitachi called, right in front of my fucking salad. Todoroki glared at him. Will you shut up about the saloof? His words died as Midoriya ran in, punching him square in the stomach. He nearly toppled over. Hitachi might have gone down at once after a hit like that. Man, Midoriya did not pull his punches just because they were dating Hui. That was dirty, Todoroki huffed, grabbing Midoriya's wrist and swiping his legs out from under him with a wide sweeping kick. Midoriya didn't go down, but he did lose his footing, allowing Todoroki to land a punch on the side of his head. Back and forth they went, exchanging blows. Their fight was probably as long as the last 3 Hitachi had put together. In the end, Todoroki won by getting Midoriya face down in the dirt, a hand holding his left arm behind his back, the other grabbing his head and keeping his face down. Midoriya thrashed in his grip before he stilled with a soft whine. I yield. Todoroki jumped off him at once, pulling him up into a sitting position. Sorry, are you okay? I didn't hurt you too badly, did I? He asked, hands cupping his cheeks. He scanned his face for injuries before looking elsewhere on his body. Nope. Midoriya said, I'm right as rain. What about you, Shoto? I hit your face at one point, do you think you'll bruise? He asked. Who cares? Todoroki asked, I'm not nearly as important as you. His right hand moved to Midoriya's forehead, probably cooling him by the way he relaxed into his touch. How could I care about myself when my bunny is hurt? Jesus fucking Christ. This was too much. Bunny? He called him fucking bunny? You have got to be kidding. Hitachi rubbed his face. Man, Todoroki really just marked his fucking territory, hey? SH Shoto. Midoriya whispered, before he leaned in and nuzzled their noses together. Damn it, where's a weapon when you need one? Hitachi was ready to leave this mortal plane right about now. Luckily, Midoriya caught himself, pulling back with a flushed face. Anyway, Shinsu-kun, do you think that was helpful? Yep, Hitachi said, still hiding behind his hands. Think I'm done though. I'm gonna go home and pour bleach directly into my eyeballs, thanks. Sorry. Midoriya squeaked. I'm not, Todoroki said. The next morning, Izuku stood on the train platform waiting. He was on his phone reading some hero news articles. He heard footsteps not too far from him. He glanced up, and Kiken was only a few yards away. This might be a good opportunity. Morning, Kiken. He said. Kiken didn't look up. But he didn't walk away. Izuku took this as an invitation to come closer. Hey he started, now only about arm's length away from him. I'm really sorry. I honestly do like sparring and fighting with you. But it was wrong of me to do it so you'd calm down. You're right. You're not a dog, you're a person. Izuku, do you even have any idea why the fuck I'm so angry about this? He asked. His voice had a sharp edge to it. Do you even have a fucking clue? He asked again, because I don't think you get it. He frowned. I thought it was because I was trying to coddle you. Not the only fucking reason, jackass, he snapped. He still hadn't looked at him. You know, I used to think you were just some puny little weakling trailing after me, thinking you were hot shit without a quirk to your fucking name, and now you can have any quirk you want and it's gone to your big fat green head. Gone to his head? Gone to his head? What the fuck are you talking about? Izuku asked. Gone, are you high? Gone to my fucking head, Katsuki. I genuinely have no idea what you're talking about, but if you think my quirk makes me think I'm better than you, think the fuck again. I hate my quirk. Do you know how awful it feels to steal a quirk from someone? He tried keeping his voice down. Kiken growled. You do think you're better than me? Did he even hear him? But I'll fucking show you. You could have 1,000 quirks and I'd still kick your ass. You won't need to throw fights in order to make me feel better. You think I throw fights? Izuku asked. Don't think, I know, he growled. You think you're so much fucking better than me that you go throwing fights just to keep me in check because you think if you don't I'll cry like a fucking toddler. Izuku was fuming. I don't think you'll cry. I think you'll hurt someone. Kiken looked at him then. Hurt someone? Why the fuck would I do that? The train was pulling up. Oh, like you haven't before? He asked. I remember before my quirk came, Katsuki. Or did you forget what Deku means in the first place? I haven't forgotten, he snarled, leaning closer into Izuku's space. It still fucking applies. Even with all the quirks in the world, all the hand-to-hand combat, and all the fucking special favors from All Might, you're still fucking useless. The words were a slap in the face. He may as well have just spat on him. Izuku felt his mind gray out around the edges. Tears began flowing at once, streaking his face. His expression was blank. The train door opened. The car was empty aside from one person. A comforting head of red and white hair. Izuku stepped onto the train. Take the next one or get in a different car. His voice was almost too calm. It sounded alien to his own ears. Right, because you can tell me what to do. A bit of that control broke. Go fuck yourself, Katsuki. Izuku snapped, before flipping him off. Fuck you, Deku. Bakugo yelled back before stomping off to get into another car. The doors closed and Izuku buried his face into his hands. The mask shattered. Tears were flowing down his cheeks. He crouched down to the ground, sobs pulling themselves out of his body. He felt a warm hand on his back. Shoto was at his side, mumbling something to him, but all Izuku could hear was his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. Eventually, Shoto pulled him into a seat. More people filled the train car, but Izuku couldn't stop himself from crying. He couldn't be bothered to care either. Shoto just kept close, letting him bury his face in his neck. Izuku. We're at school, he said softly. Come on, I know where we should go. Izuku didn't look where Shoto led him. His eyes were puffy, his head was pounding. He just gripped Shoto's hand tight like a lifeline until he found himself sitting on a soft green couch in a familiar office. Suddenly his father was on his other side. Izu. He mumbled softly. What happened? He asked, more so to Shadow than to him. I'm not entirely sure. But I think he and Bakugo got into a fight. I only caught the end of it, but they used some pretty harsh language with each other, Shadow said softly. They haven't talked in over a month. I tried to apologize, Izuku finally said. About what I said after capture the flag back in May, he held back another sob. He yelled. Said, even with all the quirks in the world, A sob hiccuped out of him. I'd still be useless. He wasn't sure what face Dad was making. Or Shadow for that matter. Both of them were quiet. But it was Shadow that spoke first. I'll kill him. Dad shook his head. I'm sorry Izu. I know that's a sore nerve. He shouldn't have said that. Maybe I can talk. Don't bother. If he's done with me, then I'm done with him, Izuku said. If that's the way Bakugo wants to play this, then fine. His tears dried up almost at once. I'm done. Alright, that's where we'll leave off for the day. Thanks so much for listening along with me today. If you enjoyed, please like and comment down below and check out the video or playlist on the screen for more content from me. I look forward to seeing you next time. Ciao for now, lovelies.